Still 20 seconds to go, but it's all right. We'll jump on in. Ahoy there, Wasted Water Sports. Welcome to the newest edition of Generations, our vodcast series that we've started up. Sports talk then, now, and beyond. Hence the spacey sort of theme, but you probably already figured that out. Welcome along, everybody. UFC Only Fams, Mr. Ed's Dead, peace. And Blake Lyons, ahoy there. Welcome to tonight's episode, all about Finals Footy Fever. Gamer Mel, a Melbourne Storm fan, ahoy there. You'd be very familiar with Finals Footy Fever. I myself, not that exciting a time for me over the years. And for the old Panther, a little bit more exciting, especially in recent times.
Plenty.
So we want to touch upon, before we start getting into the Finals Footy Fever, we want to... Actually, maybe we should wait and see if he pops in. Because we want to touch on the Gold Coast Gladiators topic just a little bit. A question that was raised in the last stream by Will. So, yes, indeed, Blake. Yes. The old Panther.
Yeah, I'm the one responsible.
The young shark. Hey, that's not bad, actually. I like that. UFC Only Fams, ahoy there. UFC Only Fams wanted to talk about childhood trauma. Now, as I stated to him in the chat, fairly good childhood for me, but I'm sure you've got some childhood trauma stories that's been from my childhood. I'm wondering if you still have some lingering, ongoing mental scarring every time you see a cricket bat.
Well, fortunately, I don't stand close enough to them anymore.
Okay, you learnt that lesson.
I learnt that lesson, yeah. But, yes, that was an interesting day that day, wasn't it? I think it's probably the only time you've ever hidden from me.
Yes, and I discovered that behind a tree is not necessarily the best hiding spot. I probably would have been better off going back inside. Yes, I thought for sure that I was in a little bit of trouble over that. Because it's not very... I mean, you expect to get in trouble from your dad when you hit him in the head with a cricket bat. Under normal circumstances. Whether...
That wasn't so bad. It was the follow-up, wasn't it? I mean, you hit me again.
Yeah. When that second impact when you're already down. But at least it was a plastic cricket bat. So, Blake Lyons is asking who is playing for this week. So, coming up on Friday night, let's talk Finals Footy Fever. So, let's start with the present, the now. Because coming up on Friday, elimination time again. 2 teams already eliminated. Of course, one was my team. I was not surprised at all by that. But we've got coming up on Friday night, the Melbourne Storm versus the Sydney Rooster. And I am having a hard time coming up with predictions because this final series, that is, has not gone anything like I imagined it. It really hasn't. We've got an extremely lopsided... well, I guess you would call, I don't know, let's just call it left-hand side of the draw. I don't know if there is such a thing as left and right, but we've got one really lopsided side of the draw where Penrith, the Melbourne Storm, and the Roosters still remain. And regardless of what their form has been like throughout the course of the season, throughout the final series thus far, regardless of that, those are 3 teams that know all about finals footy. 3 seasoned teams. It's a very, very strong side of the draw. And on the opposite side, you've essentially got 3 brand new teams to finals football. Because this is a new, young Broncos outfit that have no experience in finals football at all, really. The Warriors, when was the last time they were in the finals? And Newcastle, once again, nobody expected them to be there, really. So you've got... on one side of the draw, all the 3 traditional, these teams are always there or thereabouts, especially in recent years. And then you've got, on the other side of the draw, 3 brand new teams. So it's a very interesting, very lopsided in my opinion. So I mean, I think the Warriors will deal with the Knights pretty easily. Let's start with that one. I think the Warriors defeat the Knights pretty easy over there in New Zealand. I say that purely because Newcastle, I don't think Newcastle are travelling as nicely as it seems. I don't think they're going as well as people think they are, because out of their 10 in a row, who have they really beaten? You look through that 10 in a row, they haven't really... I mean, apart from Melbourne, but Melbourne were playing that game with 12 for large parts of it. So, and that's what people seem to forget. Melbourne had a player in the sin bin for a big chunk of Newcastle's damage during that game. So, I mean, they beat the Bulldogs twice. They beat the Rabbitohs, but we saw towards the back end of the season. I'll let you have a say in a second, I promise.
You're right. Yeah.
They beat the Tigers a couple of times. They've not convinced me yet that they're the real deal, and the only way that they will convince me of that really is by knocking off the Broncos. They have to beat the Warriors first, of course. But if they can actually get to the grand final, then they're capable of winning it. But I'm not convinced that they can get there. That's my 2 cents.
I think their problem is they're not playing Sunday.
Or at home.
Yeah.
That'll have something to do with it as well.
It will. Their winning form has been on Sundays and afternoon games, and it does make a difference.
Yeah, so I think we're in agreement. Warriors at home?
I think so. The Warriors, they sometimes they play a semi-final type of football, don't they? And I think they'll do that against the Knights.
And Friday night, so that one's on Saturday. Friday night, we've got Storm versus Roosters. I have sort of predicted the Roosters' resurgence of sorts for quite some time. I was pretty much the only one who didn't give up on them. And here they are. They snuck into the finals. They beat the Sharks, which I also predicted. And, geez, now you've got a little bit of a theory. Do you wish to share that theory on live stream, or was that reserved?
Was this the one about Storm?
Yes.
I don't know. You reckon it was ludicrous?
I did, yeah. But we love ludicrous stuff around here, don't we? Wasted World of Sports. We love a good ludicrous conspiracy theory type of accusation thrown towards a team.
Okay, all right. Well, the ludicrous idea was that the Storm actually threw that game against the Broncos because they wanted to get onto the Penrith side of the draw.
Now, if I could just stop you right there,
Yes.
That's what I find the ludicrous part. Why would you want to be on Penrith's side of the draw?
Right. If you're going to win the grand final, if you're going to win the premiership, you have to beat Penrith, basically, because I think that's the way everybody looks at it. You've got to beat Penrith to win the premiership. So you get onto their side of the draw, knock them off in that major semi-final. You're in the grand final, and I think the Storm have got the Broncos covered if they make the grand final. And there's a forerunner for that back in 1975, wasn't it? I told you the Roosters.
Oh, you told me. I was going to say, how would I know? I wasn't born then.
The Roosters, their main obstacle to win the premiership was Manly. The feeling was in 1975 that if you beat Manly, you win the premiership. The Roosters played St George in the major semi-final, and St George knocked them off. But the Roosters had to play Manly in the final, and they beat Manly, because if the only way you were going to win that premiership in 75, so the talk was, that you had to beat Manly. And the Roosters got into the grand final then against St George and beat them 38-0. So there you go. So maybe it's not a ludicrous idea.
Yeah, is it sort of an ambush mentality?
Yep. Yeah, I think
catch
so.
them, because maybe catch the Panthers before they've switched into grand final mode.
Yep.
Get them in the grand final when they're going to be switched on. We're stuffed. Let's try and get them early when they maybe not fully firing, not throwing everything at that qualifying final, that could be the rationale behind it, I suppose. But I do, yeah, I don't know. For me, I think you cruise on. Like the Broncos have got themselves onto a very, very handy side of the draw when they beat the Storm in week 1. Because, as I was saying, it's very lopsided. They've got what should be an absolute cakewalk at Suncorp against either one of these two teams that they come up against, which hopefully that's exactly what they're thinking as well, because then they'll slip up, and that would be nice for everyone, except for my T-shirt sales, because no more penalty Broncos once they get knocked out. But yes, I think if it were me, I would definitely rather cruise on into the grand final rested, because you haven't really had a tough match going in, but then maybe that plays into it as well. As I was saying earlier, we've seen what happens to teams in finals when they have an easy run in and they're not battle-hardened and they don't have that edge to them when it really, really counts. So, who knows? Look, there's smarter people than I in the decision-making process that are involved and all across that, I'm sure. So, but yes, very, very, very interesting. And who knows? Who's to say?
Well, I've got a hope rather than a prediction for that game, Storm and Roosters. I hope that it actually goes into extra time and then to Golden Point, and that they bash the hell out of each other.
Yep.
And
so
I think that would be good from our Penrith perspective.
Do we know what actually happens if it's still tied at the end of Golden Point?
Well, on my understanding, it is that they can't have a drawn match.
Yes.
They play the extra time, and then if the game's still tied at the end of that extra time, then they go into Golden Point. Yeah. And they play,
but if it's still
play till they drop, I think.
Oh, okay. They just go.
Well, there probably is some time limits on it, but
I wonder what the count. I hope it's not some stupid countback system like they had in the Cricket World Cup, where it was the most fours. I think it was. Whoever hit the most fours throughout the course of the tournament or something won by countback. But speaking of countbacks, we've got. Well, you have a little bit of information about finals formats, don't you? Because the way that it is now isn't the way that it always used to be. And we've had some dodgy finals formats over the years.
Yeah, well, it would take too much time to go into actually how they operated. But over the years, there's been a top 4, but that was back when they had only 10 teams in the competition. And the top 4 would be Team 1 would play Team 3, and Team 2 would play Team 4, and the winners would go into the final. Back in 1912, they decided to go to first past the post. So whoever had the most premiership points at the end of the premiership rounds, they won the comp. And that lasted till 1925. They figured they were losing crowds. The crowds weren't going to the footy because with several weeks to go, the winner was already decided.
Yep, who's interested in that?
Yeah, and they've had top 2, where the top 2 teams have just played the final. And then in I've got to get the dates right, 1926 up to 1953, they had the top 4 again. And which then, through the semi-final system, played off to see who got into the grand final. Then in 1954, they had a different top 4. 1973, when they started to have expansion, and they started to have expansion in the competition, they went to a top 5. And back in those days, they didn't apply the points differential to determine who got into the playoffs. If a couple of teams were level on points, they would actually have a midweek playoff, and that's what happened with Penrith in 1985 when they first made the playoffs. They had to play a midweek game against Manly to earn the right to go in the playoffs against Parramatta, and then got flogged. Because it'd be pretty hard to play 3 games within the space of 6 days. Yeah.
Do you reckon they would have got flogged by Parramatta that year?
Well, they did. They got beaten 38-6 or something.
Oh, hang on,
yeah, they did.
Yeah. In the regular season.
38. Sorry.
In the regular season.
No, in the playoff. Yeah, they beat Manly 10-7 in the playoff to get into fifth place.
To get in, yep.
Yeah, and then they got beaten by Parramatta. Yeah.
Yes, well, it would be very hard to back up.
Yeah. But it was a big deal for Penrith, first time in.
Yeah.
Tim Sheens was coach.
Oh, well, there you go. Tim Sheens has got a pretty solid rap sheet.
Yeah. And then after all that, we started with the McIntyre systems and top 8s and top 10s and the lead up to the Super League war. Yeah. Yep. At one stage, there was 20 teams in the competition, and they had a top 10. Yeah. Which
is just Well, I mean, it sounds ludicrous, but it is, I suppose. But I mean, we're not that much better now. I mean, it's a little bit different now. The Dolphins have come in. It's not half the competition anymore, technically, but I still stand by the fact there's too many teams go into the finals, and we had some good games over the weekend, but I find that if you're going to qualify for finals, you should be winning more games than you're losing, and far too often in that battle for 8th spot, teams that are on 50-50 records or below, 50% or below, playing finals football and sometimes even getting in. Like, it doesn't happen very often. The team from 8th spot goes through deep into the playoffs, but when it does, you're just kind of... It's not an underdog story for me. It's just like, this shouldn't even be happening kind of story. As much as we do love a good underdog story, depending on who the underdog is, of course. UFC Only Fams, of course, just recently visited up the Sunshine Coast. They've got a population of 500,000, apparently. So, there you go. I wonder what their rugby league playing register is for the Sunshine Coast. They all end up playing for Melbourne anyway, but I mean, that's a legitimate thing. The what is it? The Sunshine Coast Falcons? Is that what they're called? They're the feeder club for the Melbourne Storm. But anyway, well, they were. I'm not sure if they still are. So, finals, Footy Fever. We've done our predictions. We've done the now. It's a bit hard to talk about beyond when it comes to this sort of stuff, because I think it's only going to get worse as far as my problem with finals, in that there's too many teams. I think it's going to get worse before it gets any better because of all the TV money.
Absolutely.
And streaming money. There's going to be more finals. There's going to be more teams qualifying.
And they're starting to talk now about rest weeks.
Rest weeks, yeah, that's ridiculous.
At the end of the premiership rounds. And
it should be... The whole season should be seen as a schedule that you plan for, and some unexpected things are going to happen, but yeah, I know the reason behind it is because teams rest players, but the argument's always going to be, if you're good enough and you've got yourself into that position to justify resting players, fair play. You've earned the right to not play your full squad, and I think a big part of the problem was they might need to look at, rather than rest weeks, how about we look at the way that the draw is scheduled out, because it happens far too much to be a complete and total coincidence. I'm not saying necessarily that it's rigged, but I mean, how often do we see it? Not just in the NRL. I see it in Super Rugby all the time as well. The teams that play each other at the back end of the season meet again the following week in the playoffs, and you sort of know that that's the likelihood to happen for a couple of weeks out, and it's very hard to get excited about it, especially when both teams, like the Broncos and Storm this year, they didn't need to play that game, essentially, and they didn't. They rested players. Everyone did. So how do you prevent that from happening? I don't think a rest week is going to matter, because I would look at it as a coach and go, now I can rest my top line boys for 2 weeks. Right? Like, it's not going to fix anything. So I think where they need to dig deeper, look deeper, and actually look at the scheduling and go, just acknowledge the fact that this happens. This happens frequently, so many times. Oh, these guys just played each other. Now they're playing each other again. Look at the rugby union. These guys just played each other. It's happening again. What is it about the way that the draws are structured that's leading to this happening? Because it can't just be pure coincidence. There will be some sort of algorithm in behind it, much like playing roulette. Yes, there's a lot of luck in roulette, but there's a lot of percentages and statistics that can go into it as well to increase or decrease your chances of a certain outcome being the case. So maybe that's what they need to look at. Here he is, Will. Perfect timing too, because I just finished on my little spiel. So, Will, we had a question from you last time out on Generations about the Gold Coast Gladiators, and the old Panther has done some research, and it turns out we had no idea. There's a reason why we had no idea, which we will cover off. So we're just going to jump back to the Gold Coast Gladiators, which, as it transpires, actually existed.
Yep. Yeah, it surprised me. But as you say, we figured out why it surprised us, because that was in the lead up to the Super League War, and at that stage also I was involved with the Logan City Scorpions, so I didn't have a lot of time to spend.
Oh, I might have deleted that.
I didn't have a lot of time to spend.
Oh no, it's still there.
Looking around. Yeah. So what we discovered, Will, was that the Gold Coast Giants, they entered the New South Wales Rugby League in 1988 and 1989. They were in there, but the Seagulls, Tweed Seagulls, took them over in 1990, and then kept the partnership going till 1995. And at the end of the 95 season, the Seagulls pulled their support from the team, and a consortium that included the late Kerry Packer actually looked at the possibility of running a Gold Coast team, but then that didn't go ahead. So a Gold Coast businessman, Jeff Muller, I think it's pronounced Muller, he stepped in and he purchased the license for the figure that I saw was $4 million, and they changed the colours and rebranded to the Gladiators, and they started the 96 pre-season as the Gold Coast Gladiators, and they moved to Carrara. The reason they were playing down in Tweed Heads before that was part of the Broncos licence was that there wouldn't be another team from southeast Queensland in the comp. And when this fella Muller took over and they became the Gold Coast Gladiators, they moved to Carrara. But before the 96 season started, there were rumours about dodgy finances. So the ARL stepped in and took the licence off him, and they ran the Gold Coast Chargers. And they were in the comp for a few years. I
can't find it there.
I can't read it.
Dodgy finance.
It's in the dark.
Dodgy finances in rugby league.
96 to 98.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
The Chargers, 96 to 98, and then they were defunct after the Super League War. Yeah, and then of course the Titans came about in 2007.
Yep, and that's why we didn't know, because when the whole Super League thing was going on, I converted to full time to Super Rugby.
Yeah,
and you lost interest. So, did Penrith go or stay? Did they went?
They went to Super League, yeah. And that was when Brad Fittler went to the Roosters.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because I was interested in Super League because the Sharks did well until they got to the grand final.
Yeah.
Which I guess that's a nice little segue into our finals memories, and they're not necessarily what you think they're going to be. Shack of Hearts, ahoy there, mate. Because you would think maybe lots of Penrith, lots of Sharks. Well, there's not too many Sharks final stories to share. But we have probably one that it might have slipped under the radar a little bit, but you sent me the video here. I'll just pull this up. When Newcastle won in, I want to say this was 1997.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the match-winning try by Darren Albert, who can ever rivaling Suncorp. But anyways, a very interesting thing about that try, and Andrew Johns shared this. I tried to find it. I tried to find the actual interview because I think that it is better coming from the actual source than it is coming from me recounting it. But I've always remembered, it's one of those stories that you hear and it just always sits with you and you never forget it. You can forget all these other things from over the years, but I never forgot this Andrew Johns story because it taught me something, and it's something that I brought to all my streaming and other things that I've done in life, just about being prepared. Like you cannot be underprepared. There's no such thing as being over-prepared because you need to think on the moment, especially when you're going live, you're doing live comedic type of stuff, and you've got to think on your feet and be prepared as best as you can for every situation. And Andrew Johns had an interview about that particular moment in the grand final when the opportunity arose, because it was a very spur-of-the-moment thing. The initial reaction was go for the drop goal, break the deadlock. It ended up there was a tackle over on the sideline there. And Andrew Johns has shared this story, as I said, and he said that in all the lead-up, all the video work, in all the lead-up to that grand final, when they were sitting in the video rooms and dissecting hours and hours and hours of Manly footage, they found that, now that was old mate Fingers, wasn't it? Hopper.
No, Fingers Hopewadi, yeah.
Yeah, Fingers Hopewadi, that was. And they said, well, Andrew Johns said that in the video sessions, they started to pick up on this little nuance in Hopewadi's game, apart from the obvious one. But apparently, whenever Hopewadi was the marker, the first marker, he had this habit of always breaking to the right-hand side of the play the ball without even looking. He would just instinctively go to the right of the play the ball area. And so it was decided that no matter what the game situation, whenever they see Hopewadi as the first marker, to dart from dummy half, because there'll be meters to be made around the markers. And it was just interesting in this moment. Look who the first marker is at this tackle. So Darren Albert's been tackled. There he is, number 5 for Manly, getting up in the first marker position. And look at who is about to receive the play the ball. Number 7, Andrew Johns, the man himself. They had planned all week for this moment. And here it is. Hopewadi is up. He's in marker. And look where he goes. He does not have eyes anywhere on the ball. He is just looking right. And he is immediately breaking to the right from the play the ball area. And Andrew Johns, he's played this through his mind in all those video sessions in the lead up. He knows exactly what he's doing now. He's going to pick up and dart to the opposite side. And he is already 2 meters in behind the line before Hopewadi's even realised, oh, bugger, the ball's not coming out this way. And that was the moment that broke the whole defensive line apart. And we got the result that we got. So I've always remembered that story, because you just think about the hours and hours that they put in that video room for a situation that may never have occurred in the game. But they've gone, you know what, we need to do this level of analysis. We need to be prepared on every single player. It just so happened that that moment presented itself, 16 all, with the game on the line in a grand final. And those are moments that they don't always happen, but you've got to be prepared for when they do. So it's just always stuck with me, and so I thought it was a great opportunity to share it. And then you get to enjoy the spoils. And boy, did Andrew Johns enjoy the spoils that night. There's this interview that's lurking around that I've managed to track down. How many do we reckon that Joey had in celebrations after that game? Let's have a look.
And West at another of the night's grand final starts. So we're now going to catch up with Andrew Johns. Of course, enormous speculation this week over his state of health, but he did play and he laughed at the game. We're catching up with him now. Andrew, you looked a little uncomfortable at stage
Gone.
during the game.
Yeah.
How much pain were you in?
Gone.
Yeah, I've got a little bit, but you know, it's the biggest match probably of my career so far. It meant so much for you know, the region up here. So you know, I just can't believe we won it. So you know, all the pain and everything, it doesn't hurt me out. So you know, it's all worth it.
And he just completely switches off. He's gone.
Yeah, once I tackled Steve Menzies and I actually just walked off and I got crunched and I heard it crack me ribs. And I just wanted the doctor to check it out, but Malcolm said, get back on there. So can't argue with the boss when he says that, so I had to get back on there.
All right, the question everybody is asking, will you and Matthew be with the nation?
Gone again.
I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty hard. You don't want to make a decision on a nation, and it's going to be very hard to leave. And we'll sit down in a couple of weeks and decide where we want to go. But when we make the decision, hopefully it'll be the right one. Cheers.
Perfect for the wasted world of sports there, Andrew Johns. He'd actually make a very good guest, I reckon.
He could do more with you.
So you've sent through a couple to me earlier today. Did you want to, so the first one, there's Bulldogs.
Greg Brentnell does a kick, and the winger from Canterbury, Steve Gearin.
So is he the one that actually kicked it?
No,
Or is he,
no,
so
he-
he's led the chase from
Yep.
God only knows where.
Ted Glossop, the coach, he was a school teacher.
Oh, right.
Become a coach, yeah.
This is, of course, back in the era where real jobs were had.
Yep. Snatched
Well, thank you so much. $7.99 super chat there. I apologise, Will. I don't have alerts set up yet on this particular stream format, so we're just going to have to say thank you. It's not going to pop up anywhere on the screen, and I do apologise for that. But yes, thank you so much, Will. Yeah, so that was a nice one there. Let's see if we can catch wind of where he's actually come from. No, because they cut the camera away. Oh, yeah,
Right
he was right next to him, and then he's just blown everyone else off the park. Now, this was a good one, too, that you sent through. This was an interesting story.
1967.
I know it might be hard to believe that I'm actually playing something that acknowledges South Sydney.
Well, they won 4 out of 5 premierships, 67 to 71.
The addition of 2 new clubs.
And so this is the year Penrith and Cronulla came in, or the year after?
Yeah, that's the year,
Yeah.
67.
Introduction of limited tackle football with 4 tackles per set.
4 tackles per set.
1967 Grand
4.
Final was the first major football match televised live across Australia, and a spectacular intercept try by South second rower Bob McCarthy clinched the premiership for
Jeez,
South
that was
Sydney
just
in
a
heart-stopping
floater.
Grand Final against Canterbury.
Scotch in the corner, and Brian Judge, I don't know where he was, but so I had to go the full distance, and I got over 25 metre on the hamstring when I'm in. Anyway, I struggled at the try line. I got there, and as you say, it was a great moment for South Sydney.
How amazing is that, though? His hamstring goes.
A crowd of over 56,000 people in one of the most memorable.
His hamstring goes, and he still made it to the try line.
They were tough.
Mm.
Just as a by note for Will,
Yes.
I believe that Bob McCarthy was part of the syndicate that got the Gold Coast Giants going.
Ah,
Yeah.
there you go. Now here's a good one. We've got to talk about as we wind down. We've only got 10 minutes left, so good memories. I'll do mine first because, as I said, there's really only one, and the best memory of finals footy for a Sharks supporter. It has to be. Ahoy there, Vobsy! It has to be the 2016 Grand Final, which is now not playing. Oh, maybe I didn't set that one up. That would be just like me to actually not set it up. What is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, it must be... Yes, okay, I haven't set it up, that one. I've done everything else except for that one. Ah, jeez, it was all going so seamlessly as well, and then I've gone and fuck it up, that one. Okay, so it has to be for Shark supporters. Big bad Andrew Fafita charging over to put the Sharks in the lead in the 2016 Grand Final. A game that, in all honesty, they still should not have won. Shortly after this, after reclaiming the lead, there was a huge moment for the Storm down the right-hand edge, and they were just one pass away from stealing this game back. Yep. One pass. But here is a big charge. Andrew Fafita, game on the line, through Munster, through Welsh. Cameron Smith's in there. 3, 4, 5 guys. He just said, no, I want this premiership. We want this premiership. I mean, I might be a little biased, but in my opinion, one of the all-time Grand Final tries. Not one of the flashiest, but certainly in terms of the game situation and just pure grit and determination, one of the best Grand Final tries. But as I said, I'm fairly biased. Now, you've got to... sorry?
I have to answer Will.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, Bob McCarthy was the Gold Coast's first coach. Yeah, he was the...
Oh, their very first one.
The original coach, yep.
There you go.
The Giants.
So you've got a couple, and I know I hunted this one down. We've all seen it a million times, and I know we all love this one. Who could forget that tackle? That tackle.
Bang.
Sattler running across, the perfect legs tackle, sliding him into touch, yep. And everybody was pumped up over that one.
Yep.
Now we're going to play that again because you've shared a very good story with me about what Gus said about that tackle, and I've heard him say it on his podcast as well, that credit for that tackle is actually pointed in the wrong direction.
You're talking about Luke Lewis.
I'm talking about Luke Lewis.
Yep.
The unforgotten hero of this little sequence of play. Yep. Now, when I replay this, keep your eye on the top left-hand corner of the clip, because Luke Lewis does just enough to slow down the winger. Just enough. And if he doesn't get that tap, and the Roosters player doesn't have that little stutter caused by it, we have a theory that Scott Sattler perhaps doesn't get there.
Awesome.
So here we go. Keep an eye on the top left, and Luke Lewis goes racing across, just gets a hand on him and causes a stumble, and that stumble is just the millimeters difference. If he doesn't have that stumble, then watching that with that newfound knowledge, it puts a whole new perspective. Still a great tackle, by the way. Like, he still had to get over there and make that tackle. But I know for a fact that one of your all-time favourite moments would certainly have been...
We're ahead by 1 point. There's only a couple of minutes to go.
Sorry, what was this? Was this 1991? 91.
We're ahead by 1 point. There's only a couple of minutes to go. We're playing the side of beat us in last year's Grand Final. We put a lot of pressure on them. We'd forced to drop out from underneath the sticks. Scott Gard opted for the short kick-off. They needed the ball back. They needed points. He kicks across. I see MG coming on the ball like a mad bull. MG tears on the ball, catches the ball above his head, goes through the line. I just happen to be here. Around the come. MG then gives me the ball. I'm behind then the defensive line. There's only Gary Belcher. Gary's back on the line. I had little to do. Put the ball over the line. Put it over here somewhere. Great. Jump a lot higher than I can now. As I scored the try, I turn around and there he is, the big monster MG with his hands out. I jump in the air. He just comes in, grabs me, nearly hugs me to death. Turn around to go back to halfway for the kick-off. Realise if Greg Alexander don't kick the kick, they can still win the game. So then all of a sudden, get the boys together. Gavin together in the middle, I spoke about. If they get the ball back, possibly could score, kick a goal, we lose the game. So I talk about that. I didn't have to bother because Greg kicks between the posts.
He has! That's it! That is definitely it! It's gone! The Panthers will grab it!
And I made one of the worst decisions of my life.
Hope to have a schooner with every one of you tonight sometime. Thank you.
And I still today sit in a country pub anywhere and, you know, go in, maybe even a restaurant and in a club, a bit of dinner or something, you're sitting there and you see an old mate come across and he puts it there, a bloke I've never met, never seen before. He said, "Dad, say beer, we were going to have Simo after the grand final." Well, how can you knock them back?
And he actually honoured that commitment because he met my dad and had a coffee with him. We didn't drink. Dad didn't drink in those days much.
Yeah.
And so he went out of his way to spend some time with my dad. Yeah, your granddad.
Yep. And I hope that those audios are playing for everybody as well, because otherwise we would have looked like right twits just standing here smiling awkwardly through that whole segment. But now you saw in that footage as well, MG tearing over with his arms up in the air, running towards him, and we got to find out exactly why, and because he was a very excited boy, wasn't he, Mark Geyer? And I'm not going to play the whole thing because there was some other stuff said in there, but this. Oh, now I better. What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I better make sure that this is actually going to come through loud and clear for everybody. So. Monitor and output, yep, and it's up. Sweet. Okay, so this is what Mark Geyer had to say about that particular moment.
Hello, Wayne boy. How are you, my man? This is MG, brother. And Dan also tells me, Wayne, that one of your favourite moments of rugby league ever was when Royce scored his second try in the 91 grand final. How good, how good. I screamed that loud when Royce jumped over in that corner that I broke my voice box. It was just a total jubilation.
Yeah, a very, very exciting time, I'm sure, for all the Panthers players and all the Panthers fans.
Absolutely. First premiership.
Yeah, first of many to come, I'm sure, especially in this current period of time. So we have covered off everything that we wanted to talk about here for Finals Footy Fever. If there's any questions in the chat room, we're more than happy to answer them. And otherwise, we'll go through, as we normally do, we'll go through, and if there's anything we've missed, we will address it next time on the Generations vodcast. But apart from that, if there's no questions, and there's nothing else you would like to share, I think we've covered everything that we wanted to cover.
Be fine. Yep.
The only thing that I didn't mention was I was going to talk about Cooper Cronk and playing with his arm hanging off his shoulder in that grand final. One of the great grand final performances, which wasn't even really a performance. He was essentially just coaching.
But I think you mentioned that you'd like to include Johnny Sadler in one of those segments and what he did in the grand final.
Yes, yeah. It was a whole thing because old mate from Souths who said he did his hamstring in was meant to lead me in to playing with injuries. And yes, so obviously Cooper Cronk from more recent times, directing the team around to a grand final victory with one arm.
John Sattler playing with a broken jaw.
The whole game? Or he broke it during the game?
Yeah. He broke it during the game, but it was most of the game. Yep.
Yeah, I think there was actually something, maybe an interview that he did that's somewhere floating around on YouTube, if you care to look it up, where he does talk about essentially just trying to pop it in. Trying to pop it back in. There we go. Yeah, Billy Smith played 40 minutes with a broken jaw against the Sharks the other week. Probably didn't even know.
It's possible.
Because they go... And that's the thing about these days compared to back then, is these days you've got your magic sprays, you've got your little injections, your numbing creams and everything. Oh, just a little bit of pain. Oh, yep. That's all right. We'll get the magic spray onto it. You don't even necessarily know you've broken anything until you get back to the change rooms. As hard as that might seem to believe, but yeah, he's probably going, oh, geez, something's not quite right there. Oh, well, we'll just give me the spray. We'll look at it after. Yeah. Specific score predictions for the two games this weekend. I think the Warriors win quite comfortably, quite big, quite comfortably at home. The Knights, as I said, have really failed to impress me as much as they seem to be impressing everybody else. For that, I apologise. I just don't see it. I think the Warriors win, let's say, 26-12. Storm Roosters, I'm so torn on. This is such a tough game to predict because 2023 is an unusual year. I have, for the first year ever, not a single ounce of hatred towards the Melbourne Storm. In years gone by, I would have been like, hope the Roosters absolutely flog them. Whereas now, 2023, for whatever reason, all my attention's turned to other teams, I think, over the past couple of seasons. But I want to see a really good game. I would love to see, for different reasons than yours, I would love to see it go to Golden Point. Your reasons, obviously, are because it's very helpful for the Panthers the following week. But for me, I just want to see a really cracking game because I'm thinking that the other one is going to be an absolute spanking. Vobsy's a Roosters supporter, so he doesn't want Golden Point. No, Will, honestly, I don't hate the Broncos. I hate the fact that they had so many games at Suncorp, and even their away games were in Queensland, and that's not their fault. So I hate the system. I do not hate the Broncos. For your sake, for Michelle's sake, for Morgan's sake, another good friend of mine, why would I be upset if it makes my friends happy? I've got a lot of Broncos supporters that are mates, and I would love nothing more for them to experience that joy, but I cannot get behind them this year with all that scheduling, which is absolutely not their fault. So I completely understand how it comes across sometimes on the stream, but that is the reason. That is the reason. I don't hate them. I really don't want them to win. Don't get me wrong, but it's the same reason why I've taken a dislike into Newcastle this season as well. All those Sunday afternoon games at Newcastle at home, it kind of makes me go, you just want to see these guys slip up. But hey, look, I think they've got a pretty dream run through to the grand final now. I think their place in the grand final is pretty much guaranteed. And should they get up on the day, there'll be no sour grapes from me. I don't want to see it happen, but yeah, absolutely no hatred towards the Broncos.
Well, I'm sorry, Dan. I hate everybody.
Yeah, everyone but the Panthers.
So, somebody's asked for my predictions.
Yes.
Oh, Will again. Yeah. I think the Warriors will win easily. It'd have to be by 12 or 13 points, wouldn't it? And,
I would think so.
And I think the Roosters will win by 1. 13-12.
In Golden Point?
Yeah, in Golden Point.
Sorry, Vopsy.
13-12.
Okay, Wasted World of Sports, thank you so much for your company as always. Will, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate that. And yes, if you have any further questions, we will take note of them and we will come back to them in the next episode of Generations, where I've got to try and come up with a theme. I feel like we're racing through our themes here, but I'm sure I'll come up with something. Any suggestions for a theme, let me know. Otherwise, I will catch you guys on the weekend for all the NRL action, hoping to throw in a couple of Rugby World Cup games there as well, depending on the time and who's playing, but definitely Friday night for the Storm versus the Rooster, and Saturday, Warrior versus the Knights. Thank you so much.
Ahoy, everyone.
Catch you next time.